I died doing everything right and woke up in hell.
My name is Mariana Soledad Reyes. I am 34 years old. I died for 11 minutes on March 18, 2024, in Querétaro, Mexico.
For years, I struggled with something I did not recognize as a struggle at all. I was busy, always busy. Double shifts at Hospital General de Querétaro, prayer group leader on Wednesdays, community outreach coordinator on Saturdays, Sunday school helper every week without fail. Everyone called me faithful. I believed them. But deep down, beneath the schedule and the smiles and the endless to-do lists, something inside me was dying. I told myself it was exhaustion. I told myself it was the cost of serving God. I told myself that fatigue was proof of devotion, that if I was tired, I must be doing something right. I was wrong. Prayer had become mechanical. I would kneel beside my bed at night, my mind already racing through the next day's tasks. I would close my eyes and recite the same words I had said 1,000 times before. But I was not speaking to anyone. I was performing, checking a box, fulfilling an obligation. Worship felt the same. I would stand in church on Sunday mornings, hands raised, voice singing the familiar songs, but my heart was not there. My mind wandered to the patients I needed to check on, the groceries I needed to buy, the emails I needed to answer. I was present in every space, but absent in every moment. And the worst part? I did not even realize it. I thought this was normal. I thought this was what faithfulness looked like: exhaustion, busyness, constant motion. I believed that if I stopped, if I slowed down, if I rested, I would be failing God. So I kept going. I kept saying yes to every request. I kept filling every empty space in my calendar. I kept telling myself that one day, when things slowed down, I would rest. I would pray properly. I would sit with God and just be still. But that day never came, because I never let it come. My husband Carlos tried to tell me. He would watch me collapse into bed at night, too tired to speak, too drained to even kiss him goodnight. He would say, "Mariana, you need to slow down. You are going to burn out." I would smile and tell him I was fine, that this was temporary, that once we got through this season, things would ease up. But there was always another season, always another need, always another reason to keep moving. And then came March 18th. I woke up that morning before sunrise, like I always did. The alarm had not even gone off yet, but my body was already awake, already preparing for the shift ahead. I dressed quickly in the darkness, careful not to wake Carlos. I grabbed my nurse's badge from the nightstand, slipped on my shoes, and walked out into the cool morning air. The drive to the hospital was quiet. The streets of Querétaro were still empty, the sky just beginning to lighten along the horizon. I liked this time of day. It felt peaceful, sacred almost, like the world was holding its breath before the chaos began. I parked in my usual spot and walked through the employee entrance, nodding to the security guard as I passed. The hospital smelled the way it always did. Sterile, sharp, faintly metallic. I clocked in at 6:47 a.m. and headed straight to the 3rd floor. My shift started normally. I checked vitals on the recovering COVID patients in rooms 210 through 215. Most of them were stable. A few were improving. One elderly man, Senor Herrera, smiled weakly when I adjusted his oxygen mask and told me his daughter was coming to visit later that day. I smiled back and told him that was wonderful. But even as I spoke, my mind was already moving to the next task. The medication rounds, the charts that needed updating, the meeting with Dr. Ramirez about the new patient protocols. I was always thinking 3 steps ahead, never fully present. By 9:30 a.m., I was on my 2nd round of checks. I walked into room 214, where a younger patient, A woman in her 40s was sitting up in bed, finally breathing without assistance. She had been on a ventilator for 2 weeks. Seeing her awake, alert, smiling, it should have filled me with joy. And it did, for a moment. But then my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from the prayer group coordinator asking if I could lead tonight's session because she had a family emergency. I quickly typed back, "Yes, of course," and slipped the phone back into my scrub pocket. The woman in the bed was saying something to me, thanking me. But I barely heard her. I was already thinking about what I would say at the prayer meeting, what scripture I would read, how I would organize the time. I stepped out of room 214 and into the hallway. The morning light was streaming through the tall windows at the end of the corridor, golden and warm. I remember noticing it briefly. Sunrise, beautiful, and then pain, sharp, suddenly, radiating down my left arm like fire. I stopped mid-step, my hand instinctively clutching my chest. The clipboard I was holding clattered to the floor. I tried to breathe. No, but the air would not come. My vision blurred at the edges, the bright hallway dimming as if someone was slowly turning down the lights. I heard my own voice, distant and strange, whisper, "Something is wrong." My knees buckled. The cold tile floor rose up to meet me, and the last thing I saw before everything went dark was the sunrise still glowing through the window. The cold tile against my cheek should have felt real, but it did not. I could see everything, the fluorescent lights above me, the scuff marks on the hospital floor. My clipboard was lying a few feet away, papers scattered. My ID badge had fallen beside it, my photo staring back at me with a smile I no longer felt. I could see my own hand stretched out in front of me, palm down, fingers slightly curled, but I could not move it. I heard footsteps running, fast, urgent. The voices shouting my name. "Mariana! Mariana, can you hear me?" The voice was Claudia's. Nurse Claudia, my friend, my coworker, but she sounded so far away, like she was calling to me from the other end of a long tunnel. I tried to answer. I tried to move my lips, to tell her I was okay, that I just needed a moment. But nothing happened. My body lay still, unresponsive. And then I felt it. A separation. Not painful, not violent, just a slow, strange pulling sensation, as if something inside me was being gently lifted while my body stayed behind. I rose slightly, weightless, hovering just above the floor. I looked down, and I saw myself, my body, lying face down, pale. Lips are already turning a faint shade of blue. Claudia was kneeling beside me now, her hands on my shoulder, shaking me, calling my name over and over. Dr. Ramirez appeared. I running down the hallway with 2 other nurses. He dropped to his knees beside my body and pressed 2 fingers against my neck, checking for a pulse. His face changed. No pulse. Start compressions. Now. I watched as Claudia positioned her hands on my chest and began pressing down, hard and rhythmic. I felt nothing. I watched my body jolt with each compression, but there was no pain, no sensation at all. I tried to speak. "I am right here. I am fine. Stop. I am fine." But no one heard me. Dr. Ramirez barked orders. Someone ran to get the crash cart. Another nurse tore open my uniform, exposing my chest. I watched them place the defibrillator pads on my skin, watched Dr. Ramirez yell, "Clear!" and press the button. My body convulsed. But I did not return to it. I floated there, suspended, watching the chaos unfold beneath me. I saw the fear in Claudia's eyes. I saw the sweat forming on Dr. Ramirez's forehead. I saw the clock on the wall, 9:47 a.m. And then, the pull changed. It was no longer upward. It was downward. A force, invisible but undeniable, began dragging me away from the scene. away from my body, away from the light streaming through the window. I tried to resist, tried to reach back toward the hallway, but I had no strength, no control. The hospital faded, the voices grew distant, and darkness closed in around me. It started slowly, like walking into a room and someone gradually dimming the lights. The walls disappeared, the floor vanished, the ceiling melted away. I was falling. No, not falling. I was being pulled, drawn downward by something I could not see. The air grew thick, heavy. I tried to breathe, but there was no air, only pressure. Only weight pressing against my chest, my throat, my entire being. And then, heat. It rose from below in slow, steady waves, not burning, not searing, but suffocating, oppressive. The kind of heat that makes it impossible to think, to move, to do anything except endure. I heard the first scream, distant, faint, a broken, mournful sound that echoed from somewhere far ahead, then another and another, dozens of voices, weeping, crying out, begging for relief that never came. The darkness thickened. I could barely see, but shapes began to emerge. Shadows, silhouettes, figures moving slowly, trapped in repetitive motions that had no beginning and no end. My descent slowed, and I realized I had arrived. The ground beneath me was not ground at all. It looked solid, like cracked stone, blackened and scorched. But when I tried to steady myself, my feet sank slightly, as if the surface itself was alive, breathing, pulsing. The heat radiated upward, not burning my skin but pressing into my chest, making it impossible to take a full breath. I gasped, trying to fill my lungs, but the air was thick, heavy, filled with smoke that had no visible source. I turned slowly, trying to understand where I was. Shadows moved in the distance, not walking, not running, just existing, trapped. I could hear them now, soft weeping, not loud, not screaming, just endless broken sobs that echoed from every direction. I tried to call out. My voice cracked. No one answered. The silence between the sobs was worse than the sound itself. It was heavy, crushing. It pressed down on my soul like a weight I could not lift. This was not a place of fire and torture like I had imagined. This was a place of separation, of isolation, of regret that had no end. I fell to my knees. The heat intensified, not on my skin but inside me, as if my very spirit was being exposed. Every hidden thing, every ignored warning, every moment I chose routine over relationship. It all surfaced at once, and I could not push it away. I whispered, "God, please." But the words felt hollow, because deep down I knew. I had been saying his name for years, but I had not been speaking to him. I had been speaking at him, prayers without presence, worship without heart, service without surrender, and now I was here, alone. I do not know how long I knelt there. Time did not exist in this place. Seconds felt like hours. Minutes stretched into eternity. The weight on my chest grew heavier, and I thought I might collapse entirely. And then I felt it. A presence, not physical, not visible, but undeniable. The air shifted. The oppressive heat pulled back slightly, as if something greater had entered the space. I lifted my head slowly, trembling, afraid of what I might see. And then I heard the voice. It did not come from outside me. It came from within, resonating in my soul like a tuning fork struck in perfect pitch. Clear, steady, unshakable. Mariana. I froze. No one had spoken my name, but I heard it. I felt it. It was not angry. It was not condemning. It was truth. The kind of truth that strips away every excuse, every justification, every lie you tell yourself. I whispered, "Yes." The voice spoke again. You served me with your hands, but your heart was far from me. The words pierced through me like a blade, not cutting to harm, but cutting to reveal. I wanted to argue. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to list everything I had done, the double shifts, the prayer groups, the community outreach, the sleepless nights caring for the sick. But the words would not come, because I knew. I had been serving a version of God I created, a God who valued productivity, a God who measured worth by exhaustion, a God who rewarded busyness. But that was not the God who was speaking to me now. The presence moved closer, though I still could not see it. The heat around me dimmed slightly, and for the first time since my descent, I felt something other than dread. I felt exposed, not in shame, but in truth. "Look," the voice said, and suddenly the space around me changed. The shadows in the distance grew clearer. I could see them now. Rows and rows of people, kneeling, standing, moving in repetitive motions that never ended. Some were carrying water that never reached its destination. Some were building structures that crumbled the moment they finished. Some were organizing invisible papers, shuffling them endlessly with frantic movements. Their faces were blank, empty, hollow. They moved without joy, without connection, without rest. I watched one woman kneel in prayer, her lips moving rapidly, her hands clasped tightly together, but her eyes were distant, glazed over, staring at nothing. She was not praying to anyone. She was performing, reciting, checking a box. And when she finished, she stood, looked around as if waiting for approval that never came, and then knelt again to repeat the exact same prayer, over and over, forever. My breath caught in my throat. I saw a man nearby, standing before an invisible crowd, teaching, gesturing, his mouth moving with passionate intensity. But no one was there. No one was listening. He continued anyway, teaching the same lesson again and again, never realizing that his audience had never existed. Another figure knelt beside a stack of invisible bricks, building a wall that collapsed every time it reached shoulder height. But he kept building, kept stacking, kept repeating the same motion with the same hopeless determination. I felt tears forming, though I did not know if spirits could cry. "These are the ones who worked for me," the voice said, gentle but unbearably heavy, "but never knew me." The words settled over me like stones. "Said they gave me their time," the voice continued, "but not their hearts. They gave me their service, but not their trust. They built kingdoms in my name, but never entered my presence." I shook my head slowly, my voice breaking. "But they did so much. They sacrificed so much." "They sacrificed everything," the voice replied, "except the one thing I wanted." "What?" I whispered, though I already knew the answer. "Themselves." The word echoed through the space, reverberating through the scorched ground, through the thick air, through my very soul. I felt it settle deep inside me, heavy and undeniable. I looked at the woman still kneeling, still praying the same empty prayer. I saw the man still teaching to no one. I saw the builder still stacking bricks that would never stand. And I realized, this was not hell because of what they did. This was hell because of what they refused to do. They refused to stop. They refused to rest. They refused to simply be. "Busyness became their god," the voice said softly. "Exhaustion became their identity. And when I called them to stillness, to intimacy, to presence, they could not hear me, because they had trained themselves to only hear their own noise." I collapsed forward, my hands pressing into the scorched ground. The heat pressed back, but I did not care. I felt the weight of every rushed prayer, every distracted worship song, every moment I chose productivity over his presence. I saw myself standing in church, leading the prayer group, my voice strong and confident, but my mind already planning the next task. I saw myself kneeling beside a patient's bed, praying for healing, but checking the clock on the wall. And I saw myself reading scripture in the morning, but skimming, rushing, never truly absorbing. I had been so busy serving him that I forgot to know him, and the worst part, the unbearable part, was that I had felt him calling me to slow down. I had felt him whispering, "Rest, be still, come to me." But I dismissed it. I told myself I was too needed, too important, too faithful to stop. I was wrong. "I wanted your heart, Mariana," the voice said, "not your resume." I broke, not physically but spiritually. Every wall I had built around my exhaustion, every excuse I had crafted, every lie I had believed, it all shattered, and beneath it was the raw, painful truth. I had loved the idea of serving God more than I loved God himself. I had loved being known as faithful more than I loved being known by him. I had loved the approval of others more than I loved his presence. The tears came now, hot and relentless. I wept not because I was in hell, but because I finally understood why. I had spent years building a life that looked righteous, while my soul slowly starved. The voice did not speak again for a long moment. The silence was no longer oppressive. It was waiting, giving me space to feel the full weight of what I had seen. I looked up slowly, my vision blurred with tears, and whispered, I did not know I was so far from you." "You knew," the voice said, not unkindly, "but you were too afraid to stop long enough to face it." The truth of those words cut deeper than anything else. Because it was true, I had known. Deep down, beneath all the activity and the schedules and the endless motion, I had known that something was wrong, that I was drifting, that my relationship with God had become transactional instead of transformational. But I had been too afraid to stop, too afraid of what I might find if I sat in the silence, too afraid that without all the doing, I would discover I had nothing left. And now, here in this place of eternal regret, I understood. The doing had been my shield, my distraction, my way of avoiding the one thing God had always wanted, me, not my service, not my sacrifice, not my schedule, just me. "You will return," the voice said quietly. I lifted my head sharply, disbelief flooding through me. "You will return," it repeated, "but you will not return the same." The voice continued, each word falling like a weight I could not escape. "You will warn them. You will tell them what you have seen. You will tell them that intimacy cannot be replaced by activity, that I do not measure love by labor, that I am not looking for servants who are too tired to know me." I nodded, trembling, unable to form words. My entire body, or whatever I was in this place, shook with the enormity of what I was being asked to carry back. "Tell them," the voice said, and now there was urgency in it, that time is shorter than they think, and when they stand before me, I will not ask how much they did. I will ask if they knew me. The presence began to pull back, and I felt panic rising in my chest. "Wait!" I gasped. "How do I go back? How do I leave this place?" The voice did not answer, but the heat around me suddenly intensified. The ground beneath me cracked, splitting open with a sound like thunder. And from somewhere above, impossibly far yet impossibly close, a burst of light tore through the darkness. The light was blinding, not gentle, not warm. It was fierce, violent, cutting through the oppressive darkness like a sword thrust from heaven itself. I shielded my face instinctively, though I had no physical hands to raise. The shadows around me recoiled, shrinking back into the corners of the realm. The weeping grew distant, the heat pulled away. And then I felt it. A hand, strong, steady, firm. Reaching down into the place where I knelt, I looked up, squinting against the brilliance, and though I could not see a face, I knew this was not the voice that had spoken to me moments before. This was something different. Someone else, an angel, a messenger, sent to retrieve what had been shown mercy. The hand did not ask for permission. It simply grasped my arm and pulled. The force was overwhelming. I felt my spirit lurch upward, yanked from the scorched ground with a violence that should have hurt but instead felt like liberation. The darkness shattered around me. The stone cracked. The smoke dissipated. And I was rising, faster and faster, pulled toward the source of the light. I tried to look back, to see the place I was leaving, but the ascent was too fast. Everything blurred. The shadows, the silhouettes, the endless rows of souls trapped in their cycles. They faded into nothing, and then cold. Sharp, biting, shocking cold. It hit me like a wave crashing over my spirit, so sudden and brutal that I gasped or tried to. The oppressive heat vanished entirely, replaced by a chill that felt almost painful. I was no longer rising. I was falling now, but differently. Not being pulled down by darkness, being pushed gently but firmly back into something, back into myself. I felt weight return to my limbs first, heavy, solid, real. Then pressure in my chest, building and building until I thought I might explode, and then pain. Searing, brutal pain erupted in my chest, my heart convulsed, lurching violently as if it had been shocked back into rhythm. My lungs expanded with a force that felt like they might tear apart. Air rushed in, sharp and cold, filling me completely. I screamed, or tried to. The sound that came out was more like a choked gasp, ragged and desperate. My eyes flew open and the world flooded back in all at once. Bright fluorescent lights, white ceiling tiles, faces hovering over me, pale and terrified. "She is back! She is back!" The voice was Claudia's. Her hands pressed against my shoulders, holding me down as my body convulsed. I tried to sit up, but I could not. My muscles were weak, trembling, completely unresponsive. "Mariana, stay still. You are okay. You are okay." Dr. Ramirez leaned over me, his stethoscope pressed against my chest. His face was tight, focused, but I could see relief breaking through. "Pulse is back. Breathing is shallow but steady. Get her on oxygen. Now." Someone slipped a mask over my face. Cool air flooded my lungs, and I gasped again, this time more controlled. My vision cleared slowly, and I realized where I was. The hallway, 3rd floor, Hospital General de Querétaro, the same place I had collapsed. I turned my head slightly, wincing at the stiffness in my neck, and saw the crash cart beside me. The defibrillator pads were still attached to my chest. My uniform was torn open, buttons scattered across the floor, blood smeared on the tiles, my blood from where I had hit the ground. "Mariana, can you hear me?" I blinked, focusing on Claudia's face. Her eyes were red, tears streaking down her cheeks. She was gripping my hand so tightly it hurt. I nodded weakly. "You were gone," she whispered, her voice breaking. 11 minutes. We thought we lost you." 11 minutes. The words echoed in my mind. 11 minutes in that place. 11 minutes that felt like eternity. I tried to speak, but my throat was raw, my voice barely a rasp. I saw... "Do not talk," Dr. Ramirez interrupted, his hand on my shoulder. "Save your strength. We are taking you to the ICU." But I could not stop. I had to say it. I had to tell them. I saw where I was going. Claudia's face paled. She glanced at Dr. Ramirez, then back at me. "Mariana, you need to rest. I was in hell. The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. No one spoke. The hallway, usually filled with noise and movement, fell silent. The other nurses who had gathered around took a step back. Dr. Ramirez stared at me, his expression unreadable. I closed my eyes, tears slipping down my temples. I was in hell, and God told me to come back, to warn people. Claudia squeezed my hand tighter. Warn them about what? I opened my eyes, staring up at the fluorescent lights, and whispered, that busyness is not faithfulness, that serving Him is not the same as knowing Him, that we can work ourselves to death and still be far from Him. My voice cracked on the last words, and I felt the weight of them settle over me like a blanket. I had lived that lie for years. I had believed that my exhaustion was proof of my devotion, that my endless service was evidence of my love. But it was not. It was evidence of my fear, my pride, my refusal to simply be still and let Him love me. They lifted me onto a gurney, and I felt the cold metal beneath me, the rough blanket draped over my body. As they wheeled me down the hallway, I turned my head slightly, looking toward the window where sunrise light still poured through. The same light that had been there when I collapsed. The same light that had broken through the darkness and pulled me back. I stared at it, tears streaming freely now, and I whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for not leaving me there." I stayed in the hospital for 3 days. 3 days of tests, monitoring, rest. 3 days of lying in that bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything I had seen. The doctors called it a stress-induced cardiac event, likely brought on by chronic exhaustion and burnout. But I knew the truth. It was not just my body that had been dying. It was my soul. When they finally released me, I went home, but I did not go back to work. I did not return to the church schedule. I did not pick up where I left off. I stopped. For the first time in years, I simply stopped. I spent mornings sitting in silence, no agenda, no requests, no list of people to pray for, just me and God. Learning to hear His voice again, learning to feel His presence without performing for it. It was harder than I expected. My mind kept drifting to my to-do list. My phone buzzed with messages from church members asking when I would return. My body felt restless, guilty for not being productive. But I stayed still, and slowly, something began to shift. I started to feel Him again, not as a distant authority figure who demanded my service, but as a father who longed for my heart. I began to understand what the psalmist meant when he wrote, "Be still and know that I am God." Stillness was not laziness. It was trust. It was surrender. 2 weeks later, I stood in front of the church, not behind the podium, not leading a prayer group, just standing there, vulnerable, broken, real. I told them everything. I told them about the collapse, the descent, the heat, the shadows, the voice that shattered my illusions. I told them about the rows of people trapped in endless service, hollow and disconnected. I told them about the crushing realization that busyness had become my God. And I told them what God said to me, "I wanted your heart, not your resume." The room was silent. Some people cried, some looked uncomfortable, some nodded as if they had been waiting for someone to say it out loud. After the service, a young woman approached me, tears streaming down her face. "I needed to hear that," she whispered. "I have been killing myself trying to prove I am faithful, but I am so tired, so empty." I took her hands in mine. "Then rest. He is not asking you to prove anything. He is asking you to know Him." Over the following weeks, more people reached out. Messages, phone calls, confessions of exhaustion disguised as devotion, stories of burnout hidden behind smiles. And I realized I was not the only one who had been walking that path. I began sharing my testimony wherever I could. Small groups, online platforms, anywhere people would listen. And the response was overwhelming. Because the truth is, so many believers are drowning in activity while starving for intimacy. Jesus said in Matthew 11, verse 28, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." But we have twisted that into, "Work harder for me, and maybe one day you will earn rest." That is not the gospel. The gospel is surrender. It is trust. It is knowing that He does not measure our love by our labor, but by our willingness to simply be with Him. I am not perfect. I still struggle with the urge to be productive, to fill every moment, to prove my worth through service. But now, when that urge rises, I remember the heat, the shadows, the voice, and I choose rest. I choose presence. I choose Him. If you are hearing this, please listen. Examine your heart today. Are you serving God, or are you serving your need to be seen as faithful? Are you exhausted because you are doing His work, or because you are doing your own? He does not want your performance. He wants your heart. Stop. Be still. Let Him love you, because one day you will stand before Him, and He will not ask how much you did. He will ask if you knew Him. Do not wait until it is too late.